They say the early bird gets the worm. What they don't say is sometimes the worm gets replaced by a dancing teenager with a ring light. My name's Ray Moreno. I'm 47 years old, and for the last 20 years I worked as the senior floor supervisor at Ridgway Home and Hardware. It's not glamorous, never was, but it was mine. I showed up before the sun came up every damn day, and I stayed until the last receipt was printed, the floors swept, and the lights clicked off behind me. No shortcuts, no skipping steps. I clocked in like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. When I started, Ridgway was still run by the founder, old man Carl Ridgway himself. He shook your hand like he meant it, handed out bonuses in cash every December, and wouldn't let you wear sneakers on shift. Said it looked sloppy. I bought my first pair of black work boots back then and wore through 7 more over the years. Never missed a shift, never called out, even when I had the flu or threw out my back in '09 hauling a pallet of concrete mix on my own. I didn't complain. You don't complain when you're raised to believe work is honor. I met my wife there too, Rosa. She worked Register 3, smiled with her whole face, even when customers were jerks. We had our first date in the break room over vending machine coffee. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. She was braver than anyone I've ever known. After that, the store was all I had left to pour myself into. So I did. I missed a lot of life over the years. My son's 8th grade play. I was running a Black Friday shift. My daughter's birthday dinner, inventory count. My buddies stopped inviting me to fishing trips and barbecues because I always said I had to work. That was fine by me. I figured I'd retire at Ridgway, maybe even get a little plaque someday. In honor of Ray Moreno, a man you could count on. Something dumb like that, but meaningful, at least to me. The last couple years, things started shifting. They brought in new hires, kids mostly, barely out of high school, showing up late with iced coffees in hand, faces lit up by phones instead of aisle numbers. I trained them, tried to set the tone, but it was like trying to teach a cat to swim. They smiled and nodded, then went right back to scrolling. Dress codes loosened. One girl wore fuzzy slippers on her 3rd day. A guy showed up with earbuds in. Management said we needed to meet workers where they are. Apparently, where they are is glued to TikTok and allergic to sweat. I bit my tongue, just kept showing up early, doing my job, covering the gaps. That's what I do. Did. I noticed the boss, Becca, watching me more closely over the last month. Not with concern, more like discomfort. She's 32, used to be a shift lead before corporate swooped her up and put her in charge. I trained her once, showed her how to run inventory reports without freezing the system. Back then she called me Mr. Moreno, with respect in her voice. Lately, just Ray, and never with eye contact. I didn't question it, not really, but I felt it. That slow, creeping feeling like the ground's shifting beneath your boots, and you're the only one trying to stand still. Like the place you gave your best years to is becoming something else, something you're no longer part of. Last week, I was restocking plumbing supplies when she called my name over the intercom. Flat voice. Ray Moreno to the office, please. I wiped my hands on my apron and made the walk. 20 steps I'd taken 1,000 times before, but that morning, they felt heavy, like I already knew. The office looked the same as always. Sterile beige walls, filing cabinets that haven't held real files in a decade. But she was different. She sat behind the desk in lime green Crocs, legs crossed, eyes on her phone until I sat down. Ray, she said, putting the phone face down. I want to start by saying how much we appreciate everything you've done here. That's when my stomach dropped. Appreciate is the prelude to a punch. You've been incredibly dependable, she continued, truly. But we're moving in a new direction with the store's culture, more laid back, more flexible, I blinked. Flexible? You're an incredibly hard worker, Ray, she said, folding her hands. But honestly, it's starting to make others feel uncomfortable. You set a tone that's, well, a little intense for where we're heading. I laughed before I meant to. You're telling me I'm too dependable? It's about balance, she said, like she was reading it off a PowerPoint slide. And honestly, some of the newer staff feel like your style makes them look bad. I just stared at her. 20 years of no sick days, no excuses, no complaints. And I was getting benched because I gave too much? She cleared her throat. We've decided to bring in someone a little more aligned with our evolving brand. We're hiring a content-driven associate, someone who will engage with customers on social and bring energy to the floor. I pictured that kid who danced by the paint aisle last week, filming himself lip-syncing to something with auto-tune and neon lights. That's who they were replacing me with. I stood. My legs felt like cement. She extended her hand. I shook it, and I walked out without saying another word. I've replayed that meeting in my head more times than I care to admit. Every pause, every word, every blink she gave me across that cheap plastic desk. Crocs. She wore lime green Crocs, like she was heading to a backyard barbecue, not firing a man who gave 2 decades of his life to that store. I didn't say much in the moment. I think I was in shock. When someone punches you in the gut, you don't respond with a monologue. You try to breathe. That's what it felt like someone took the air out of me in one quiet blow. Becca. I taught her how to do cycle counts, back when she was 24 and nervous around the compactor. I stood next to her during her first Black Friday rush and told her not to let the customers see fear. She used to take notes when I talked. I remember her asking me once if I ever got tired of doing it all the old school way. I said, if the roof doesn't leak, don't rip it off. She smiled at that. I thought she understood. But now she sat there in that office like she'd never stocked a shelf, like she hadn't watched me carry that place through storms, sick days, and supply chain nightmares. Her tone was smooth, almost gentle, a little too rehearsed. Ray, we're trying to build a more laid-back culture, she'd said. Customers connect better with people who feel real, not rigid. I'd stared at her. You think I'm not real? She gave a tight smile. You're just so dependable. It's intimidating to some of the newer staff. You don't mean to, of course. But we want Ridgeway to feel more relaxed, more engaged. Fun. That word echoed in my head as I walked out of that office. Like I'd spent 20 years being the villain in a comedy club. Like showing up early and working hard was some kind of act of aggression. I didn't argue. I didn't fight for my job. I don't beg. Not for anyone. That's something my old man drilled into me early. Walk away with your head up, or don't walk at all. She told me the replacement's name, Cade, 21 years old. I'd seen him around the floor, ring light sticking out of his backpack, hair bleached on one side like someone dipped him in glue. He filmed himself folding t-shirts last week and edited it to a Drake song. I remember because I walked by and heard him say, "That's fire," to himself. Apparently, that's what customers want now. Someone who dances between aisle 12 and 13, throws peace signs, and says, "Smash that follow button," in a store apron. When I stepped outside, the air hit me harder than it should have. July heat with a bite to it. The parking lot shimmered under the sun, and I stood there for a second longer than I needed to. I watched a kid, maybe 16, skateboard past me with earbuds in and zero awareness of anything outside his little world. I got in my truck and sat there with the engine off, hands on the wheel. Didn't cry, didn't yell, just sat. I thought about Rosa, about how proud she used to be when people called me Mr. Ridgeway behind my back, like I was the store. I thought about all the weekends we said we'd take off once things settled down, and how they never really did. I thought about the way my kids used to leave drawings in my lunchbox before they got old enough to realize their dad was married to his job. That drive home felt longer than usual. The road hadn't changed, but something inside me had. I watched the world out the window, and it didn't feel like it was mine anymore. Everyone staring at screens, half smiling at nothing, moving fast, but going nowhere. I felt like a relic, like a black and white photograph, someone stuck in the middle of a TikTok feed. When I got home, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house was quiet, no keys clinking into a locker, no checklist waiting on my clipboard, just silence. I took off my boots and lined them up like I always did, even though I didn't need to. Habit. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, made coffee I didn't really want, scrolled my phone without meaning to. I found Cade's TikTok page. Of course he had one. Thousands of followers. There he was, dancing on my sales floor like it was a nightclub. One of the comments said, "OMG, I want to shop there just to meet this guy." Another said, "This is how you do retail in 2025. Maybe they're right. Maybe the world passed me by and didn't leave a note. But there's something about seeing the place you helped build turned into a stage for cheap laughs that doesn't sit right in your gut. Something that feels like betrayal, even if no one says it out loud. I didn't break anything, didn't drink, didn't spiral. I just sat with it. The weight of being let go, not because I failed, but because I worked too hard, too consistently, because I gave a damn when nobody else did. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the fridge and the occasional dog barking 2 houses down. My body felt tired, but my brain wouldn't stop replaying it. The Crocs, the smile, the way she said, "laid back," like it was a virtue and not an excuse, and the way I shook her hand like a gentleman, even as everything inside me started to crack. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No alarm blaring at 5:15, no coffee gurgling in the pot, no morning news muttering from the kitchen TV. Just quiet. And for the first time in 2 decades, I didn't have anywhere to be. I laid there longer than I should have, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow, like it was just killing time. I didn't jump out of bed, didn't lace up my boots, didn't check my phone for the shift schedule. I just stayed still, and it felt wrong. I finally got up around 8, later than I'd been out of bed since before my youngest was in diapers. No lunch to pack, no clipboard to check, no Rosa humming in the kitchen either. Just me and the silence. I didn't even bother making coffee. What was the point? Coffee had always been fuel. Without work, it just felt like hot water pretending to matter. I wandered through the house like I'd never seen it in daylight. The couch had a sun-faded patch on one arm. I never noticed. The bookshelf was gathering dust. I found an unopened envelope from the electric company and laughed. Didn't even remember getting it. I'd been living like a ghost in my own house, punching a clock while the rest of my life ticked by in the background. It hit me around mid-morning, standing in the hallway. I had no idea what to do with myself. I sat in the recliner and flipped through channels like a man hoping to stumble into purpose. Nothing stuck. News was all noise. Reruns felt like mockery. Eventually I landed on silence again and just listened to it. There's a certain kind of hum in a house when it's too quiet. The fridge, the wind outside, the creak of old floors settling like bones. I started thinking about Rosa. She used to say the saddest sound in the world was a man with nothing to do. She wasn't wrong. I looked around at the photos on the walls, the kids' graduations, the trip to Yosemite we almost canceled because I couldn't get coverage for a weekend shift. Rosa had insisted we go anyway, said the mountain would outlast the store, and she was right. She was right about a lot of things. Around noon, I put on jeans and a clean shirt, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside. I didn't have a plan. Just felt like I needed to move. I ended up driving toward Ridgeway, out of muscle memory. Didn't even realize it until I turned onto the frontage road and saw the store's sign in the distance. Funny how habits hang on longer than jobs. I parked across the street, near the old diner Rosa and I used to visit after late shifts. From there, I had a clear view of the front entrance. Same windows, same smudges, same crooked "we match competitor prices" sign I reminded them to fix every week for 2 years. And right there, out front, was Cade. Phone propped up on a mini tripod, music blaring from a Bluetooth speaker. He was doing some choreographed arm-flailing routine, spinning around in slow motion, with a Ridgeway apron half-tied around his waist, like it was a costume, not a uniform. A couple walking in paused to watch, confused, not amused. The man shook his head and pushed open the door, muttering something to his wife. Cade didn't notice. He was too busy hitting whatever beat the algorithm had told him was important that day. I felt a heat rise in my chest. Not just anger, something deeper, like grief with teeth. That was my floor, my place. I bled there, sweated there, missed life to hold it together. And now it was a stage for some kid chasing likes instead of doing the damn job. And he wasn't even doing it well. I gripped the steering wheel, the leather worn smooth under my palms. Part of me wanted to march across the street, tear down his stupid tripod, and tell him to get the hell off my floor. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching. The truth is, it wasn't really about Cade, not entirely. He was just a symptom of a bigger sickness, one I hadn't wanted to see until it swallowed me whole. The world didn't run on loyalty anymore. It ran on optics, on clicks and engagement, and whatever trend blew in next. Men like me, we were the scaffolding, invisible once the paint dried. I closed my eyes for a minute and breathed deep. The smell of fresh-cut grass and car exhaust. Real things. Things that don't need filters or hashtags. When I opened my eyes again, he was still dancing, still grinning like he owned the place. But something shifted in me. I wasn't done. Not really. I didn't know what the next step was, but I knew this. I had more to give. Not to Ridgeway, not to Becca, but maybe to people like me, folks who still believed in work, in showing up, in giving a damn. Maybe there was still value in that voice. My voice. I put the truck in gear and pulled away without looking back. Let him dance. Let them laugh. The world may have changed, but I hadn't said my last word. Not yet. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to go viral. Hell, I didn't even fully know what that meant until it happened to me. It started with a cup of diner coffee and a friend I hadn't seen in a couple years. Marcus, retired union welder, still sharp, still loud, and still somehow better with a smartphone than a man his size ought to be. We met up because I needed to talk, and he was the kind of guy who didn't interrupt when the words came slow. I told him everything. The Crocs, the handshake, the kid dancing in aisle 12. He leaned back in the booth, whistled. "Ray, that's the saddest damn thing I've heard this year," he said. Then he leaned forward. "And the most relatable. You ever think about putting that story out there?" I laughed. "What, like a blog?" "No, man. A video. Just you. Your story. You don't even have to dance." I told him I didn't know the first thing about making videos. He said he'd help. So we drove back to my house, sat in my garage next to the mower and a dusty drill press, and he set up his phone on an upside-down paint bucket. "Just talk," he said. "Tell the truth." So I did. I didn't rehearse. I didn't script. I sat on a folding chair in a Ridgeway hoodie I hadn't gotten around to tossing yet, looked into that tiny black dot of a lens, and said, My name's Ray Moreno. I gave 20 years to Ridgeway Home and Hardware. I never called out. I never showed up late. I covered shifts when people didn't bother showing. I missed birthdays, holidays, weekends, funerals. And last week, I got fired. Not because I did something wrong, but because I worked too hard. I paused, stared into the camera, and added, "They said I made the others look bad." Marcus uploaded it that night with the caption, "20 years, no call-outs, fired for trying too hard." I figured a few people might watch it. Maybe some old coworkers would nod along. Maybe some quiet applause in the dark corners of the internet. I didn't expect the flood. The next morning, I had 1,000 messages. By lunchtime, it was 100,000 views. By the end of the week, it was over 4 million. The comments came fast and fierce. My dad got laid off after 30 years. This hit hard. I was told I intimidated my coworkers by working through lunch. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel. Following, subscribed. We need more men like you, Ray. It wasn't just sympathy. It was solidarity. People from across the country started posting their own stories, photos of worn-out work boots, clock-ins with perfect attendance, pink slips from jobs they gave their lives to. A hashtag started trending. #, the Ray Standard. Someone printed it on a t-shirt. I saw a clip of a teacher in Ohio referencing my video in a union meeting. It got picked up by a local news station, then a national morning show. They emailed me for an interview. I said no. I wasn't interested in morning TV. I was interested in the people listening. Somewhere around week 2, I got an email from someone in Ridgeway's corporate office. Polite, corporate, hollow. They said they were aware of the recent media attention and reviewing the management practices at the location in question. I didn't reply. What could I say? You're late? Becca stopped showing up in the background of Ridgeway's social media. That caught people's attention. Rumors started, a transition in leadership. No formal announcement, just a quiet disappearance. Figures. They always make noise on the way in and vanish through the back door on the way out. Meanwhile, I kept making videos. Not just about me, about work ethic, about what it means to show up even when you're tired, about how pride isn't a sin when it comes from doing your best. I shared stories from my time on the floor, how I used to memorize the layout of every single aisle, how Rosa once helped a lost kid find his mom without causing a scene. I didn't preach. I just told the truth. And the young people? They came out in force. They messaged me for advice. Ray, how do I talk to my boss about wanting more hours? How do I not burn out? How do I work hard without getting walked on? I answered everyone I could. I wasn't working at Ridgeway anymore. But somehow, I was doing more good than I ever did behind that register. One night, Marcus said, "You realize you've built a movement, right?" I shook my head. "No, man, I just told the truth." He grinned. "Exactly. I never asked for this platform, never chased followers. But maybe that's why it stuck, because it wasn't about clout or filters. It was just a man in his garage telling the world what got taken from him and finding out he wasn't alone. People started calling me Coach Ray. I didn't correct them. Sometimes I still pass Ridgeway on my walks. Cade's still there, I think, but I haven't seen him dancing lately. Maybe they told him to tone it down, or maybe the cameras turned off when the attention faded. I don't look long. I've got other things to build now. Things that don't need approval from a manager in Crocs. 5 days. That's how long it took for everything to shift. On the 5th morning after I handed in my badge and walked out of Ridgeway, my phone buzzed with a message from a former coworker, James, from receiving. "Becca's gone," it said. No emoji, no explanation, just that. At first, I didn't believe it. Corporate never moves fast. They wait for things to blow over, bury problems under policies and memos. But this time, the heat was too much. The story had legs. News anchors were saying words like anti-loyalty culture and quiet firing, while my garage video kept circling the globe. Apparently someone at corporate had finally looked up from the quarterly report and realized this wasn't going away. No press release, no thank you for your service email. Just gone. I didn't feel triumphant. Not really. That's not how it works. There's no victory lap when something you loved turns its back on you. But there was something like peace. Like the air had cleared a little. A day later, I heard Cade got moved off the sales floor. Content integration liaison, someone said. Fancy way to say desk job. From what I gather, he sits in a side office now editing promo clips for the store's social media. No more dancing by the power drills. No more playing mascot in an apron. I don't know how he feels about it. Maybe he's relieved. Or maybe he'll flame out and move on to something else before the month's out. I don't blame him. He didn't break the system. He just played the game they gave him. What caught me off guard was the call from Ridgeway Corporate. A different voice this time. Someone higher up. Polite, rehearsed. Every word dipped in HR polish. We'd like to invite you back, Ray. Your position is open. We recognize the value you brought to our team. I didn't interrupt. I let him finish. Then I said, I appreciate the offer, but I'm already where I need to be. He paused. Are you sure? We can... I'm sure. That was it. I hung up. Calm. No bitterness in my chest. I had nothing left to prove to them. Instead, I spent the next few days preparing for something I never expected to be part of. The Midwestern Labor Values Summit. Some organizer saw my video and invited me to speak. 10 minutes, she said. Just talk like you did online. No need to dress it up. Still, I bought a new shirt, clean lines, stiff collar. The kind Rosa would have picked out for me. The summit was held in a community college auditorium. Folding chairs and black coffee in styrofoam cups. People with clipboards, people in hoodies. People who looked like they'd worked 2 jobs before showing up here. I took the stage behind a wooden podium that wobbled if you leaned on it too hard. No teleprompter, no big lights, just a microphone and a room full of eyes. I cleared my throat and told them my name. I'm Ray Moreno. I worked 20 years on the floor at Ridgeway Home and Hardware. I never called in sick. I never missed a shift. Last week, they told me I was too dependable, that I made people uncomfortable by showing up. The room was silent. Then came a few chuckles, dry, knowing. I'm not here to badmouth anyone. I'm here to talk about balance, about what it means to give your best without giving everything, about how we've let the idea of hard work get twisted, either into martyrdom or mockery. I talked about pride, about showing up not for applause, but because it matters, about the nights I drove home with aching knees and still felt like I did something real. I saw heads nodding, people wiping their eyes, not out of pity, but recognition. I ended with this. Work is part of who we are, but it should never be all we are. Respect isn't a perk, it's a baseline. And if we don't stand up for each other, the next Ray's just waiting in line. Afterward, people lined up to shake my hand. Young folks, old-timers. One woman hugged me tight and whispered, "My dad was just like you. He'd be proud." That night, I sat in my kitchen with a bowl of leftover chili and watched the sun drop behind the trees outside. I didn't miss the store. I missed the meaning, but I'd found new ways to build that, to pass it on. Maybe that's what Rosa would have wanted, for me to give my heart without letting it be chewed up. Sometimes I still get messages, people asking for advice, or just to say thanks. Sometimes they tell me their stories. I read every one. I try to answer when I can. It matters. I don't do the videos as much now, only when something feels worth saying. I've learned the internet doesn't need more noise, just a little more truth. Today marks 10 days since I left Ridgeway, only 5 since they removed Becca. It all happened fast, and maybe that's a gift. If they'd dragged it out, maybe I'd still be stuck there, tolerated but never seen. I still don't smile for the camera. I never learned how to do that. But tonight, as I sit in this quiet house with clean dishes in the sink and no alarms set for morning, I smile. For myself.